The cameras had barely settled before Trump's voice cut through the noise. With his trademark sneer, he leaned into the mic and threw shade at Barack Obama, spitting out lines meant to sting, trying to paint him as weak, as out of touch, as someone the country should forget. The room shifted, reporters leaned forward, waiting for the bite. Trump thought he had the upper hand. He thought his jabs would land, like they always had. But what he didn't realize, what he couldn't see, was that he had just lit the fuse on something far bigger than a cheap insult. The audience wasn't just watching another political hit job. They were about to see a live unraveling. Because in that moment, as Trump puffed his chest and smirked, there was silence from the other side. Not because there wasn't an answer, but because the answer was loading, building, waiting for the right strike. He had walked straight into a trap of his own making. And when the response came, it didn't come with a whisper, it came with fire. It came with receipts, with history, with a truth so sharp it cut through every word he had just spit out. Suddenly, the smirk began to fade. The swagger softened. The camera zoomed in, catching every twitch, every blink, every drop of sweat forming on his forehead. He thought he was telling the story, but now he was in it, exposed, cornered, stripped of control. Millions watching could feel it, the shift, the turn, the collapse of confidence, right there on live TV. And just like that, what started as an attack became the moment his own words became his undoing. Trump leaned into his microphone with that familiar swagger, his lips curling into a smug smirk as he fired his shot. Barack Obama, he was all talk, no action. Everyone knows it. The words echoed across the arena like a taunt designed to sting, drawing a wave of cheers from his most loyal supporters. Yet, underneath that eruption of noise, something darker pulsed through the atmosphere, a sharp tension that cut deeper than the applause could cover. This wasn't just another insult tossed casually into the wind. It was a deliberate challenge, a provocation meant to reduce Obama's legacy to a punchline. And in that moment, everyone knew the stage had been set for a clash far bigger than politics. It was personal, raw, and unavoidable. Obama sat with an unshaken calm, his posture steady, his hands folded as though carved from stone. The room buzzed with Trump's theatrics, yet he didn't move, didn't blink, didn't offer even the smallest gesture that Trump could spin into victory. His silence was deliberate, a silence that stretched, sharpened, and began to work on Trump like a mirror reflecting insecurity back at him. This wasn't the silence of hesitation. It was the silence of power, the kind that makes noise stumble over itself. Obama knew that to rush would be to validate the insult, to meet chaos with chaos. Instead, he let Trump's words echo against the walls, hanging awkwardly in the space between performance and truth. The crowd, expecting a quick sparring match, leaned forward, hungry for a reaction, but Obama gave them none. It was the kind of pause that unsettles, the kind that hints that when the answer comes, it won't be loud, it will be devastating. "Donald," Obama finally began, his voice calm, deliberate, razor-sharp, each word cutting through the air with precision. "You love to talk about action. You love to sell yourself as a man of movement, of bold steps, of deals made in gold. But let's be honest, what action are we really talking about? Because if memory serves me right, your so-called action left behind nothing but division, nothing but chaos, nothing but confusion that weakened the very fabric of this nation. And when it came to finances, your record speaks louder than your slogans. Massive debt, unpaid bills, bankruptcies piled higher than your hotel towers. The kind of debt that even your casinos couldn't quietly bury in the backroom books. That's not leadership, Donald. That's the loud performance of a man running from the silence of his own failures." The audience reacted instantly, a ripple of gasps, spreading like shockwaves through the hall. Some leaned forward, others covered their mouths, but all eyes were locked on the stage. For the first time that night, Trump's mask slipped, his trademark grin faltered, his jaw tightened, and a flicker of unease crossed his face before he forced the smirk back into place. But the damage was done. Obama's words hadn't been a simple rebuttal. They were a strike with precision, the kind of blow that cuts deeper the longer the silence after it lingers. Even the moderators exchanged quick glances, sensing the shift in energy. What had begun as another night of Trump's bluster had just turned into a chess match, where the first decisive move had been made, and it was clear who had made it. Trump lunged forward in his chair, his fingers stabbing the air like a weapon, trying to reclaim the spotlight that was slipping from his grip. "I built this country's economy back. Obama didn't do anything," he barked, but the pitch of his voice betrayed him. It cracked, not just once, but twice, wobbling under the strain of forced bravado. The audience shifted uncomfortably, picking up on the fracture between his words and his confidence. His usual swagger was thinning, desperation bleeding through the edges of his tone. Camera zoomed in, catching the tremor in his jaw, the tightness in his fists, and the faint sheen of sweat beginning to collect on his forehead. For a man who thrived on control, this was the image of someone grasping at threads that were slipping too fast through his hands. Obama leaned back slightly, his posture calm but commanding, the kind of presence that didn't need to shout to be heard. His eyes locked on Trump with the quiet intensity of someone who had already measured his opponent long before the first punch was thrown. Then, with the kind of steady tone that slices deeper than anger ever could, he began, "Donald, the economy you brag about, let's be honest, that wasn't yours to build. When I took office, this country was on its knees. We were staring at the worst financial collapse since the Great Depression. Millions of jobs lost, homes foreclosed, families broken under the weight of a system in freefall. My administration laid the foundation for recovery, brick by brick, stabilizing industries, rebuilding trust, and setting the stage for growth. What you did was walk into a house we had already repaired and painted, then tried to slap your name on the mailbox. You inherited that recovery. You didn't build it, you just claimed it like you always do." The crowd shifted in a way that Trump rarely faced. The applause that once roared with blind loyalty now carried an uneasy edge, fragments of claps breaking into nervous murmurs. Some leaned forward, unsure whether to laugh, cheer, or stay silent. A few exchanged glances, as if watching a heavyweight fighter wobble for the first time. Trump's aura of untouchable dominance was thinning, and the unease spread through the room like a ripple. He could feel it too, that invisible shift of power, the moment when bravado stopped being enough. His chest heaved, his jaw tightened, and for the first time in the night, the crowd saw not a king of the stage, but a man scrambling to hold his ground. "And let's not forget," Obama pressed forward, his words sharp yet steady, "your actions were never about bringing Americans closer, never about healing. They were about tearing at the very fabric that holds us together, setting race against race, turning neighbor against neighbor, fanning fear because fear was the only currency you had. You didn't build walls to protect, Donald. You built walls to separate, to divide, to tell one group of Americans they were less than the other. That's not leadership. That's insecurity dressed up as strength." Trump's face turned a deeper shade of red, as if every word Obama spoke was a spotlight exposing cracks he had worked so hard to hide. His usual swagger faltered, his hands cutting through the air in erratic motions, no longer commanding but desperate. "Fake news," he barked, his voice breaking slightly before he pushed it louder. "That's what you always rely on, lies, nothing but lies." The crowd's reaction was no longer unanimous. While some diehards cheered, others exchanged uneasy glances, sensing the unraveling of a man who thrived on control, yet was losing it in real time. His tone, meant to project power, now carried the shrillness of someone cornered. Obama didn't blink. His tone remained steady, almost surgical. The truth doesn't need to shout, it doesn't beg for attention, it doesn't need a slogan, and it doesn't hide behind a rally. It stands on its own, unshaken. You can scream fake news 100 times, 1,000 times, but repetition doesn't create reality. A lie shouted from a podium is still a lie. And the fact is, this your presidency wasn't leadership. It was chaos packaged as strength. It was division dressed up as patriotism. And history has already written its verdict. America tried your experiment, and it failed. And it's not one this country will ever be foolish enough to repeat. The audience erupted, but not in unison. One half leapt to their feet, clapping and cheering, with an electricity that seemed to shake the room. The other half sat frozen, stunned into silence, unsure how to process what had just unfolded. In that moment, it wasn't just a clash of two men, it was a collision of two Americas. The contrast was blinding. On one side, relief and vindication as they witnessed Trump's bluster stripped away. On the other, disbelief, their champion suddenly looking smaller under the weight of truth, delivered with surgical calm. The arena became a mirror of the nation's divide, cheers and silence, hope and denial, roaring applause against the heavy hush of those who had no words left. Trump slammed his hand against the podium so hard the microphone rattled, his face contorting with rage. "Nobody respects me more than the American people. Nobody," he shouted, his words echoing through the hall like a frantic drumbeat. He jabbed a finger into the air, searching for validation that wasn't coming, his eyes darting from side to side as if the audience might suddenly rise to defend him. "Ask anyone, they'll all tell you," he insisted. but the crack in his voice betrayed the desperation beneath the bluster, making his declaration sound less like the confidence of a leader and more like the panicked plea of a man watching his grip on power slip through trembling hands. Obama tilted his head, smiling faintly, the calm in his tone cutting deeper than any shout. Respect isn't demanded, Donald. It's earned piece by piece, through honesty, through sacrifice, through a willingness to put others before yourself. His words floated above the silence that now gripped the hall. When leaders spend more time chasing applause than serving people, when they treat the stage like a mirror instead of a platform, they lose the very respect they hunger for. You don't command respect, you crave it. And craving is the opposite of strength. The audience held its breath, the truth in his voice striking harder than Trump's loudest roar. A wave of applause broke out, this time louder than before, rolling across the stage like thunder that wouldn't stop. It wasn't just a reaction, it was a recognition. A moment where the audience understood that the dynamic had shifted. Obama's words didn't land like counterpunches. They carried the weight of lessons, sharp truths disguised as calm rebukes. Each line cut through Trump's theatrics, stripping away the showmanship to reveal substance. The crowd wasn't merely entertained, they were moved, drawn to the difference between noise and leadership. And for the first time that night, it was clear who controlled the room. Trump's lips curled as he muttered under his breath, his voice dripping with frustration. "You were a weak president. I was strong," he spat, trying to reclaim control of the moment. His words hung in the air like a desperate swing, more about saving face than landing a blow. The contrast between his bluster and Obama's calm presence was undeniable, one man clinging to noise, the other commanding the room with silence. Obama's eyes narrowed just slightly, his tone calm yet razor-sharp. "Strength isn't measured by how loud you shout, Donald. It's measured by how steady you stand when the storm comes. When children were torn from their parents' arms and locked in cages, you didn't stand strong, you hid behind excuses. When our allies across the globe turned their backs, you didn't stand firm, you mocked them and left America isolated. You call that strength? No, that's cowardice, dressed up as bravado. A true leader doesn't fold when the world watches, he carries the weight so his people don't have to." The room went silent. Even Trump's most loyal supporters shifted uneasily. The weight of the words was undeniable. The silence wasn't just absence of sound, it was judgment, heavy and suffocating, pressing on everyone present. Eyes darted from Trump to Obama, measuring the contrast. One man scrambling for insults, the other anchored in calm authority. Even the cameras seemed to lean closer, capturing every flicker of discomfort. The audience knew, deep down, that they had just witnessed a crack in Trump's armor. His bluster had finally met a force it couldn't bulldoze. The silence itself became Obama's ally, echoing louder than any applause. Trump tried one last, desperate swing. His voice rose higher, almost cracking as the words spilled out faster than his mind could catch them. "I'm the reason America was respected again. Everybody said it. The leaders called me. They begged me. They told me I was the strongest, the smartest, the best president they ever dealt with. You wouldn't believe it, phone calls all the time, letters, people crying when I left office because nobody had ever seen America this powerful before. NATO respected me, Putin respected me, Xi respected me, everybody respected me. They didn't laugh at us anymore. They feared us. They knew America was back. America was winning again. Because of me. Everyone says it, they all say it, but the fake news never reports it." Obama leaned forward, his voice dropping lower, forcing the room to listen. "Respect isn't the same as fear, Donald. Fear is shallow, it fades, the moment power slips. Respect endures because it's earned. Dictators may have feared you, yes, but they never trusted you, never admired you. They pitied the United States, pitied us for letting chaos sit in the highest office. And that's the difference between a leader and a performer. A leader lifts people higher, even in their absence. A performer leaves nothing but noise once the curtain falls. You don't inspire, Donald, you distract." The silence that followed was deafening. Trump's lips moved, but no words came out. He had been stripped of his favorite armor, the illusion of control. Cameras caught the redness creeping up his face, the twitch in his jaw, as he searched for a comeback that never came. The audience, once restless, sat frozen, as though they too recognized that something irreversible had just happened. Obama hadn't just countered him, he had dismantled him. The man who thrived on chaos suddenly found himself cornered in stillness, where bluster meant nothing and truth had all the weight. For the first time in a long time, Donald Trump looked small. Obama didn't need to shout, didn't need to pound his fist. His calm tone carried more weight than Trump's loudest rally. He leaned forward, each word cutting sharper than a blade. History doesn't remember the man who screamed the most or bullied his way through headlines. It remembers those who built, those who lifted, those who left the world steadier than they found it. And Donald, when the page of history turns to your name, it won't speak of greatness. It won't be a legacy. It will stand as a cautionary tale, a warning of what happens when ego is mistaken for leadership. The eruption was instant. The hall shook as a tidal wave of applause, cheers, and stomps thundered through the crowd, each roar striking like a drumbeat of justice. The air itself seemed to vibrate, drowning out every desperate sound Trump tried to force through his lips. He opened his mouth, but his words collapsed into the noise, swallowed whole by the eruption of voices that rose higher, fiercer, more relentless. His face drained of color, the orange mask reduced to a pallid gray, and his fingers clutched the podium as if it were the only thing anchoring him to reality. The man who had once commanded cameras with a smirk now stood trembling, shrinking before the storm of a people who had finally stopped listening. For once in his long, bombastic career, Donald Trump was left utterly speechless. His mouth opened, but no words would come, as if even his instinct for bluster had abandoned him in this moment. The usual weapons, mockery, insult, diversion, and chance, were powerless against what had just happened. He could not spin it, could not twist it, could not bury it under noise. Barack Obama had dismantled his facade not with anger, not with volume, but with calm, unshakable reason. And in that hall, under those lights, reason proved to be the mightiest force of all, stronger than any shout, sharper than any insult, and more devastating than any smear. It was a silence that told the world the fight was already over. The moment did not stay confined to that room. Within hours, the clip of Trump's unraveling and Obama's calm, surgical clapback was everywhere, shared on phones, dissected on panels, replayed in living rooms across the country. People leaned forward, watching not just a political takedown, but a moral one, where arrogance was stripped bare in front of truth. Each replay magnified Trump's stammer, his loss of composure, and the quiet certainty with which Obama dismantled him. The verdict spread far beyond applause. It was a collective realization, whispered and shouted alike. When ego collides with principle, when noise collides with clarity, truth wins every single time.